A little bit of backstory. I had went to Miami earlier this month and didn't know a lot of people there, but I still went. I'm 20 and I'm not really jacked, but I know how to hold myself. I had got there on a Saturday, and I knew that weekend nights at the beach are when the fun things happen. Night eventually rolled around, and I took an Uber to South Beach. I walk around for about an hour and a half and find a bench to sit down at to check my phone. As I am sitting down, minding my own business, a person walks up to me and sits on the same bench as me. I didn't think much of it. The place was packed, being that it was a weekend night. A few minutes passed by, and he starts up a conversation with me. I will refer to him as Dude. He seemed like a chill person, around the same age as me, average build. I'm usually really good at reading vibes, and I didn't get any negative vibes from him. I tell him that I'm new here and that I had just arrived in Miami and that I don't really know anyone here. That was probably my first mistake. My phone had started to die and I also needed to use the restroom, but the bars and the restaurants there won't let you use their restroom unless you're a customer, so I was shit out of luck. The dude told me that he has a place not too far away from here and offered to let me come over to use the restroom and also to charge my stuff for a few minutes. Looking back now, I should have declined the offer, but I did take him up on the offer. We get to his place, and as soon as I enter, I got really odd vibes. His house was just giving off negative energy, but I don't pay it any attention. He tells me where I can plug my stuff in and shows me the way to the bathroom. So, after using the bathroom, I walked back into the living room and sat down. My plan was to let my stuff charge for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I would leave. The dude sits down beside me, and we actually had a pretty good conversation at first. He just seemed like a chill person who was trying to be nice. But about 5 minutes after he sat down beside me, that's when things took a turn. He gets up, walks to the kitchen, and pours 2 glasses of vodka. He walks back to me and hands me one. I didn't want to come off as rude, so I took the glass and just held it. I wasn't trying to get drunk, especially around someone that I just met. After he realized that I wasn't drinking, he kept on trying to get me to drink. He kept saying stuff like, "Come on, I just want to help you relax some." I told him that I didn't want to drink, and he got visibly upset. He started saying stuff like, "I let you in my house and you can't take a shot with me?" At this point, my gut was telling me to get the fuck out of there, but I don't know for sure. But I'm pretty sure his intentions weren't as pure as I had originally thought. As I was trying to figure out a way to leave without upsetting him, he started to compliment my looks. And as someone who was sexually assaulted 2 years ago, my fight or flight response was kicking in. I got up and acted like I was looking for my wallet in my backpack. I acted like I couldn't find it and that I probably left it at the beach. I said that I was going to walk back to the beach and that I would return when I found my wallet. And no, I definitely didn't plan on returning. I packed my stuff, and as I was doing so, the dude started laughing. It was such a demonic laugh that I'll never be able to get it out of my head. I bolted out of the door, and I get on the sidewalk and start walking away. I'm not even off the block yet, and I hear his door open back up. The dude starts speed walking towards me as if he was following me while he was still laughing demonically. My first thought was, okay, well, This is a serial killer, and I'm about to be killed. I started to run. I don't know exactly how far I ran, but it was at least 5 blocks. Once I knew that he wasn't following me anymore, I spent my last $10 on an Uber to get me far away from the area. The night was still young, and I knew the nightlife would still be active at the beach. So, I went back to the beach just about 10 miles away from my original location, just to make sure that if he went back there looking for me, that he wouldn't find me. So, to the dude who was trying to push himself on me, fuck you. A few years ago, I was dating a great man for whom I have a lot of respect. He's a good person. He's kind of the perfect man, and let's call him Noah. We broke up because I had to move to begin my training as a magistrate. It was really a peaceful breakup. We have a lot of affection for each other, and we're still very good friends. Our families are friends too, and it's kind of funny because he lives where my parents live. For my part, I live in the same neighborhood as Noah's parents. It's a friendly and caring relationship that we have now. Because of COVID-19, I can't go to see my parents for Christmas and New Year, so I spend the holidays with Noah's parents. 2 weeks later in January, I leave my house to go to work. Someone wrote insults on my door, and my car is scratched, and my blood is freezing, and I'm pretty shocked. You should know that magistrates in France are protected. Fines and prison sentences are even harsher when an offense is committed against them. I'm a little afraid that it's due to the case that I'm working on. I deal mainly with land stories, buildings, and damn it, there are people who are crazy sometimes. It is not a reasonable fear because I work on cases without dangerous people. I had to contact the cops, inform the court, and etc. And these kinds of stories are not taken lightly. The police quickly find out who the person behind it is, a certain Elsa. At that time in France, anyone leaving their home after 7 p.m. without permission was fined 135 euros. The day before, someone had been caught 2 kilometers away and fined. The police then asked me if I knew the person who did this, and she's a lady in her mid-60s. Her face is unknown to me, but I am not withdrawing my complaint. A week later, I get a call from Noah who warns me that he is visiting his parents with his girlfriend whom he's been dating for a year. We are both friends on social media, and she's a normal person. At that time in France, to move between different regions, you had to have a good motive. I didn't ask him about it, and I told myself that he wanted to see his parents and that he found an excuse to come. I come home from work at night, and it does not miss. I surprised the crazy old lady of the photo near the entrance of my building. She clearly drank before I got there, and I'm on the defensive. I was ready to fight if it's unpleasant. She called me a whore, that I was too involved in a guy's life, and that I was trying to separate them. In short, that I was the other woman in her daughter's couple. I don't ask her any questions, and I let her talk, stunned. Furious, I call the policeman, who try to calm the old lady. I went up to my house with a few men because my presence made her angry. And later, I learned that she went to a van, but they didn't let her drive because she was drunk. It was only a few days later that I learned the truth. Noah visits me on weekends with his girlfriend. She told me that they came for her mother, who was declared demented. Apparently, she almost assaulted someone. Police found a shotgun in the back of her car. A little panicked, I asked her if her mother's name was Elsa. The police and doctors thought that she was just crazy and that she wanted to attack me for no reason. But Noah's girlfriend explained that it was because I had spent Christmas with her boyfriend's parents when she couldn't do it. Her mother had taken the news very badly, and she was afraid that her daughter would lose her boyfriend. I'd rather laugh about it than cry. The mother is on treatment now, and I withdrew my complaint. I think about this story now because I learned that Noah and his girlfriend are expecting a baby. Well, what a funny story. Some years ago, couchsurfing was still a new thing, and I, a female, early 20s at that time, was a very active user on the platform. I stayed with many hosts as a traveler, but also frequently hosted couchsurfers in the 2-little-bedroom apartment that I shared with an amazing roommate in a small university town. I didn't get too many requests, but all reviews were positive. What's important to notice is that couchsurfers were sleeping with me in the same room on an inflatable mattress. Of course, I would always vet hosts and guests before accepting or sending requests, trying to filter out weirdos and creeps. And my system seemed to work. Fast forward to the last person that I ever hosted. I had spent the night in another city with a group of friends. We had gone to a concert, slept at a friend's house, and took a train back home the next morning. We were all visibly hungover, wearing sweatpants and no makeup. In my country, the train ticket is cheapest if you travel in a group of 5, and incentive to not use the car. So, waiting in front of the ticket machine to find more people to share the ticket with was very common. We were 3 broke students and happy to add 2 more people. During the train ride, I started to chat with one of the guys on our ticket, a traveler with a tent and a huge backpack who was not connected to the other person on our ticket. This backpacker told me that he was from New Zealand. He was in his early 30s, which was probably a lie since he looked older, and that he had been traveling through Europe for the past 8 months with no plan of going back anytime soon. We ended up chatting a little bit about travel, philosophy, cultural differences, and etc. throughout the whole train ride. Nothing out of the ordinary. I mentioned that I had a boyfriend, a long-distance relationship, very early on in the conversation, and this will be important for later. After a while, this guy came up with couchsurfing and asked if I was familiar with the concept. Being the proud CS veteran that I was, I started listing all the people that I'd ever hosted and all the places that I'd ever stayed at. He bluntly asked me if I would be able to host for him for a couple of nights because he was interested in my student town. I was a little hesitant at first, but I guess my brain was not functioning properly to tell him no directly. I called my roommate to ask if she would be home and whether she was okay with a guest. She didn't mind, and I told him that I could host him for this night only because I had stuff for university to finish the next day. First and easiest chance to avoid this creep missed. The train arrived. We went home to drop our stuff off and proceeded with a quick tour throughout the old town. Bear in mind that I was still hungover and I haven't had the time to take a rest. He didn't seem too interested in the city tour and asked me if we could go shopping instead. We ended up in H&M where he bought a t-shirt and some underwear. He kept asking for my opinion on color and style before buying things. A little strange, but fair enough. Afterwards, He tagged along when I went grocery shopping for dinner, where I also bought 2 bottles of wine. While still out, he asked if he could stay longer, but I declined. Overall, he made me feel a little uncomfortable, but I brushed it off, telling myself that it was only one night and that he would be gone by tomorrow. And yeah, there goes my second chance to give him the boot. At home, he took a shower that lasted well over an hour. I really thought he was trying to drown himself in there. When he finally came out of the bathroom that had turned into a steam room, he was wearing his new t-shirt and also the underwear, which I would find out later. In the meantime, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and my roommate had arrived home. He then lounged in my room charging his phone and using my computer to look up where he wanted to go next. This was before smartphones were widely used. When I went back to my room, I casually asked him for his profile on couchsurfing, the very reason why he was sitting in this very room. He casually replied that he had deleted his account a while ago. What the hell? Why would a person backpacking through Europe delete their account? It didn't make any sense, and in hindsight, I should have kicked him out then and there, no further questions asked. But it was already evening, and I wrongfully felt like I had to be a good host until the next morning. What a big mistake and third chance that I missed. Dinner was fine overall. We ate and shared a bottle of wine in 3. My roommate, however, couldn't stay with us for longer because she worked in the hospital and had to wake up really early, which is helpful for later. The couchsurfer creep stayed seated at the table and reminded me that I had bought another bottle of wine, which should be opened now. I politely told him that I was done drinking for the night. Remember the hangover? Yeah. But I told him that if he wanted, I could open the second bottle for him alone. I thought he would decline, but I was wrong, obviously. He proceeded to drink half of the second bottle, and once he noticed my liquor collection, he tried to convince me to do shots with him. I gave him the same reply as before, and he went for 2 or 3 shots while I was watching him. The quality of the conversation downspined rapidly, and I said that I would stay in the kitchen for a little bit to do the dishes or work for university, and invited him to relax in my room in the meantime, which is a translation for leave me alone and go sleep. I was seriously not in the mood for dishes or work, but I figured that it would be better than talking to him. This plan didn't work out because he kept bouncing back and forth between kitchen and room trying to strike a conversation again. I was not very interested though, and eventually he gave up and went to sleep around midnight. Once I heard him snoring, I went to bed as well. All good, you might think. Well, far from it. During the night, I had a weird sensation. It felt like something on my mattress was moving. I later found out that the guy had reached over from his mattress to pull on one corner of my bed sheets in an attempt to wake me up. At night, however, I wasn't aware of this yet, but it kept me drifting in and out of sleep. Around 4 a.m., the couchsurfer decided to go to the bathroom. Once he came back, instead of going back to his bed, he stood at the end of mine, staring at me for several minutes, while I was wide awake but pretended to be asleep. At this point, I freaked out internally and I was cursing myself for my naivety on the train. Eventually, he went back to his bed, but immediately started whispering repeatedly, "Are you awake? Are you awake? Hey, are you awake?" I figured that I had to answer, and pretended to just have been woken up and asked in an annoyed voice what he wanted. He replied, "Well, I woke up and I have a lot of energy in me. I want to use it up." I answered him, "And why are you telling me this?" He said, "Well, I know you have a boyfriend, but it's really difficult as a guy to travel alone for such a long time." I just told him that this wasn't my problem. I jumped out of bed and went to the kitchen. No way was I going to stay with him in the same room after he admitted on wanting to use up his energy. He followed me to the kitchen and asked why I was no longer in bed. I answered that I didn't feel comfortable with him in the same room anymore, and I would like him to leave as early as possible. He pointed at the t-shirt and the underwear that he was wearing and said, "I only bought those for you and spent $30 for nothing." I simply shrugged and opened my laptop to distract myself. Instead of packing his stuff and leaving immediately, he was restless, bouncing between kitchen, bathroom, and my room, doing a series of weird things that I don't all remember. The top 3 of those were washing his hands and face at least 10 times in a row, filling a glass with water, circling it around, and pouring it back into the sink repeatedly with the water running from the tap. And when I asked him about what the fuck he was doing, he came awfully close to me, looking me into my eyes and intensely saying, "Some things from the childhood, they remain, and you can never go back and can't change them." While he said that, he looked like the male version of this crazy girlfriend meme. This last thing really freaked me out, but thankfully, that was the time that my roommate woke up and entered the scene. I quickly filled her in about the night's events in a language that the guy didn't speak. Finally, he got the message that there wouldn't be any energy use-up time, and then started packing. My guest eventually grabbed all of his stuff, turned around to look at a picture of my boyfriend and I, sighed and said, "He's a lucky guy." But before finally going out of my door, he asked me for my number. My initial thought was to shout at him, like what was he thinking? But I figured, since he already knew where I lived, this additional information wouldn't make a difference, but might make him leave. I reluctantly gave him my number and he immediately tried to ring me. Once he saw it was really my number, he visibly relaxed and was out of the door. The whole ordeal, from watching me sleep to leaving, lasted around 2 hours. He was completely mental, but thankfully not violent. The cherry on the top was when the creep called me a week later. I hadn't saved his number, and after he had said his name, I just asked if he was that crazy couchsurfer who woke me up at dawn requesting sex, and then told him to never call me again, and hung up. He then sent me a text saying, "You're the crazy one." And this was the last that I heard of him, and the last time that I hosted a couchsurfer in my apartment. So, creepy couchsurfer, let's not meet again. This was 2.5 years ago. It was around 10 p.m. and I was walking towards a nearby bus station to go home, and I had to go through an area that is not known to be the best. That day, I was feeling really depressed and low, so I didn't care enough to be more careful. A guy walked up to me and said, "Give me your wallet, or I'll stab you." He was wearing sunglasses, had tiny tattoos beside his eyes, looked tear-shaped, but I'm not really sure. He had his hand in his sweatshirt pocket, and as I mentioned, I was depressed and also feeling passively suicidal. So this incident came across as annoyance to me. But I also felt shocked. Like, how could this happen to me? It felt surreal. I looked at him, annoyed and confused, and somehow managed to say, "Are you serious right now? Like, no, dude." He kept staring at me and said, "Yes." I maintained a glare, probably not smart, but didn't give in at all. A lady walked by with headphones on. I tried to call out to her, but she kept walking. I guess it makes sense since that area is sketchy and she probably didn't want to get involved. I could see a pastry shop in the distance, and I wondered if I should call for help, accept it all, or just run. I decided that I should try reasoning with this guy. I remember getting my legs consciously ready to run, in case the reasoning didn't work. I didn't want to give my wallet because I have my name, my address, and everything on my IDs in it. I didn't want to risk my family's address being out there. And of course, maybe that still wasn't the best choice. Anyways, I looked at him and kept a defensive stance. I had my hand out to maintain a gap between us. I asked him to calm down and tell me what's going on. And I kept repeating that I have no money, but if he's hungry, I can walk around the corner with him and get him some food. He said, "I need cash." I told him that I have none, and I asked, "What's going on? You sound distressed. Why do you need the money, man? Talk to me." He replied, I just do. I need to leave this city." I told him, "I understand, man. Sometimes shit gets tough and we need to get out. And I'm sorry I have no cash on me to help you. But the least that I can do is get you food." After that, it felt like we stood forever, but maybe 30 seconds passed. And then, suddenly, he said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done this." He then added, "I don't have any actual knife in my pocket anyway, but still, I'm sorry." At this point, I tell him, "Listen, man, I'm sorry you're going through tough times. I don't know your story, so I can't really pretend to understand it. But it's obvious you're going through tough times. I know it's hard to believe, but I really do hope it gets better for you. But I'll tell you that this method will land you in trouble and can cause irreversible damage. You seem like a sensible guy, so I have a feeling that you can make better decisions, dude, okay?" Yeah, just a random lecture moment. I genuinely felt some empathy for him to some level, but also felt like I needed to say whatever I could to get rid of him. He just nodded and said sorry. After that, I gave him a fist bump and told him, "Oh, by the way, even if you had killed me today, I was thinking it would be okay because I don't really want to exist anyway." He awkwardly laughed and I said, "Take care, dude. Peace." And he replied with something similar and he left. After that, I noticed my legs were shaking. Many thoughts crossed my mind. Did he let me go because I was assertive or convincing? Or was it solely because he had no knife? Should I have just given my wallet and not risk so much? There is no perfect answer, and I'm always curious to hear what others would have done. What would your reaction be? So, I'm not a very good storyteller, but I'll try my best to make this coherent. I was, I think, about 7 or 8 at that time. Me and my friend, who was 11 or 12, pretended to have a secret club, and our clubhouse was in the small forest clearing, less than 1 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer area in the city. Since I was only in the 1st or 2nd grade in my country, My mom had put me in a place where kids would go after school to eat and play with other kids for a few hours before their parents were home, since most kids got out of school between 12 to 14 when they are still so young. So that's the time that I played with my friend in the forest for some time before we invited one of his friends to join our little club. A few days after we had invited him, he told us about a weird man with a black dog that had harassed him while being in the forest alone. So, as young kids, we took his story, and after it, every time we saw a dog walker, we checked if they had a black dog. So one day, when we finally saw one, we walked out of the forest immediately to an apartment complex nearby. The yard the apartment complex had was sealed by gates on one side and was open on the other. So we thought that we would go in from the open side and crawl under the gate from the other, and then run back to the after-school thing, which I don't know if other countries have, so I don't know what to call it. So after we had crawled under the gate, we debated for a moment if we would go through the forest or around it. We decided on going through, since it would be faster. We were about halfway through the hill to the forest, constantly checking our backs to see if the man was following, and to our horror, we saw him running up the hill towards us without his dog, and to this day, I wonder where he had left his dog, but that's irrelevant. My friend told me to run as fast as I can back to the place, and luckily, neither of us fell down, since the forest has moats left from wars and a steep hill on the other side where the building was. We ran inside and told only one person, and they obviously didn't believe us. And after that encounter, we stayed inside for under 30 minutes before leaving, constantly feeling like we were being watched from the trees. After I left because I was scared, I went to my friend's house since I didn't want to go home yet, and my other friend just went home. On the way there, I ran into another friend of mine, and he told me that our common friend had called him, telling that some guy had went in there with a knife, shouting or some shit. I didn't tell many people, and the ones I've told haven't believed me. I really don't know how to end this, but fuck, that time scared me. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.